This is Marianne with Alibi for a special edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm joined today by Nikki Tertsev, Executive Director of the Cannabis Industry Alliance of Oregon, and Tucker Holland with Entourage Cannabis, a multi-award-winning cannabis operator here in Oregon. And we're here today to talk about some proposed changes to Oregon's regulations. So Nikki, tell us about this proposal and what it might mean for Oregon's edible industry.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for having us. As Director of the Cannabis Industry Alliance of Oregon, we are a trade association that's rather concerned about this proposal coming back. I say that because we saw it in the last legislative session in 2026 this year, and we are all but promised it will return in 2027. What will come back? There were 7 or 8 pieces of policy embedded within this one proposed piece of legislation, again, that we expect to see in February of 2027. And they included things like potency caps, unlimited buffer zones between licensed premises of any license types, a straight ban of infused pre-rolls, additional labeling requirements, telling you not just how to print the label, 12-point font, by the way, on every product, but also what should be on the label. Things like causes psychosis. Things that I think most folks would say, we don't have research to put on the labels for that. We may have some anecdotal experiences and personal lived experiences that are awful and touch lives in Oregon, but we can't necessarily say it creates suicide ideations as well. So the bill and several other provisions, this bill I expect to be proposed again in the next legislative session, and the Cannabis Industry Alliance of Oregon has spent time trying to negotiate, has spent time trying to soften. The real impact and the real risk here is twofold. First, to Oregon businesses. If something within the bill says individual edible packaging, like it did in the last introduction, then we see processing companies and edible companies that are successful Oregon companies will get the squeeze. They won't be able to afford the machinery. If they can afford the machinery, it will automate and lay off staff. Here's the second fold of that problem. The tax dollars that the state of Oregon will lose. They will lose income tax from people being out of work. They will lose ultimately sales tax of this cannabis product, which goes directly to treatment beds, goes directly to behavioral health resource network clinics. And so we don't want to see that happen. We want the commitment and the promise of marijuana tax dollars going towards helping our neighbors and helping our community to be intact. And this is something that would disrupt that at the end.
Curious, Tucker, what is your thought about the reason that these changes are being proposed, and what does the data actually show about youth usage of cannabis, and do we think that this is going to change that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marianne. Thank you. Thank you for having me as well. Well, the reason that Senator Reynolds and supporters of her and this initiative are proposing these types of changes is they're very concerned about youth access to cannabis, as well as incidental poisonings or incidental intoxication from cannabis with very young children. And so, but I recently sat in on the roundtable that Senator Reynolds had regarding this subject, and they presented their own data about youth access to cannabis. And one thing that I found was interesting was actually the youth cannabis access for Oregon is trending downward. It was around 20% for 11th graders in 2019, and in 2025 it was sitting around 8%. So while that is still too high and we don't want that access, we are moving in the right direction, and so I don't think it's as serious of a problem that it's being presented like we're trending the opposite way. If we were moving from 8% up to 20%, now we're looking at some dangerous trends there, and that's not what we're seeing. We're actually seeing that trending downward, and so that means our industry and our state is actually doing something right. And so I'd like to take a look at what is working and how we can support the structures that are already in place.
Nikki, so we know that cannabis is one of the most regulated industries out there, and these additional regulations will continue to change it. So are there things that can be done to further decrease minors' access to cannabis, and how does Oregon compare to other states?
Yes, there are certainly things that can be done. I want to say first, I appreciate Tucker calling out that Senator Reynolds' own data shows the downward trend in youth use. I think you can attribute that to the cannabis industry and their vigilance. I'm proud to say, in Oregon, the cannabis industry has a stellar minor decoy success rate, meaning we don't let them in. And we aren't fooled. And so that, in terms of older children or younger adults, you might say, that's an excellent point to tack on to the youth use going down. What I think is happening, and what we saw in previous conversations with Senator Reynolds, is the examples coming up. Unfortunately, a toddler who wandered into the kitchen unattended. Muffins were on the table. The muffins were commercially packaged. When we got a look at the packaging of these muffins, they're not from Oregon. And they are not distributed or sold through an OLCC licensed cannabis retailer. They would not be approved to reach the market. They are not necessarily in childproof packaging. They blow the doors off of caps for potency and milligrams that we would allow in terms of daily purchase sales limits. They are, in fact, dangerous because we don't know what's in them, what they've been made with. We have no reliability on their packaging. So when the unfortunate event occurs and a person or a young person or a toddler is left unattended and finds one of these intoxicating hemp products easily confused with one of the products from an OLCC dispensary, we have to ask, where did it come from? Most of these products are made out of state. Most of these products are shipped into state. They're ordered on the internet. We're not confident that there's age gating on those websites the way that we are confident in the age gating at our stores. We are not confident that we have an agency who has an ability to look deep into those results, those packaging results and those test results. We may not have a line of sight from Oregon as to what is actually in this product. So when that product arrives at somebody's home on their doorstep through the United States Parcel Service, we have a right to be concerned. And all of the people in Oregon, public health advocates, ourselves, parents, even children, even youth voices, we should all be concerned that this unregulated intoxicating hemp marketplace is actually what's going to upend the safe, the legal, and the taxed, the regulated market here in Oregon.
You know, of course, we all share in the dismay that a toddler would get into muffins from an unregulated market. But it's interesting to hear that the regulated space really is actually compliant with child-resistant packaging, test results, the minor decoy system works. Yeah. So Tucker, to finish this conversation up, where do you think some common ground is, and how can the industry work together with policymakers to continue to make improvements like have already happened?
I think education is a big one. That's something that we saw in the presentation that was given earlier this week. That education is lacking. The industry doesn't hide from that. We do believe that cannabis, while safer than a lot of products, is not necessarily for everybody. It's definitely not for children. And so we want to make sure that that information is out there. We want kids to be educated on the dangers of cannabis use early on. Schools are not doing a great job right now of doing that. There is great opportunity to add that into the curriculum at the school level, but also safe storage for parents. Parents need to be storing their products safely. We shouldn't be leaving intoxicating muffins just out on the table for a little toddler to go up there and grab. That's not smart. You ask most people in our industry, they know how to store their products. It's not industry people that are creating this problem. They understand the challenges, but new people entering the market may not understand these things. And so having new types of education, we're on board with that. The industry wants that. I think we can find some common ground with education. I think the battle there is where's the money going to come from? Cannabis brings in a lot of tax dollars, and I think it's wise to maybe use some of that for these purposes as well. Since it's already used for treatment and everything, let's use it for some prevention, and I think education goes a long way there.
Wow, that's fabulous. I appreciate that. Nikki, any final words?
No, I want to just echo Tucker's sentiment around let's drive some of these dollars towards prevention. Let's drive some of these dollars towards aiding and assisting parents in keeping their products away from their kids. And certainly we would welcome a partnership to be able to do that with the state of Oregon.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. This is Mary Ann with Alibi for a special edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast News.